Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Janine Cross. I will be reviewing Chapter 1 of Kirsch-Dashman and Hull, Understanding Generalist Social Work Practice. Generalist social work practice can apply to almost any helping situation. We define generalist practice as the application of a myriad of knowledge-based professional values and ethics and a wide range of skills to target systems of any size for change. When we're thinking about which type of systems or what type of practice we want to change, we look at it in three different levels. These levels are known as micro, meso, and macro social work practice. Micro practice is social work practice directed toward individuals, sometimes families. When we think of family practice, we're thinking about micro/meso practice. When you're thinking about larger organizations or communities, we consider that macro practice. In order to practice social work or generalist social work practice in micro, meso, and macro systems, we need to make sure that we are operating within our National Association of Social Workers Code of Ethics. These are our foundational principles and values of the profession. It's important to distinguish the difference between personal values and professional values. This is important because when you're practicing social work, particularly under the generalist practice model, you need to be applying the professional standards and values in your work with clients rather than your personal values. This is not to discount your personal values, but it's to make sure that you're always aware and reflect on your values and making sure that your work is not reflecting your personal views, but rather the views of the profession. It's not common for social workers to become burned out if they are working in agencies that continuously conflict with their personal values. And that's another reason why self-reflection is key. We need to make sure that, again, we're all operating at the highest standards. When there is a conflict between ethical values and principles, we consider that to be an ethical dilemma. And as a social worker, you need to decide what is in the best interest of your client and carefully apply the values and the principles of the profession in order to come to the best outcome for that particular client. There are some key principles and values that we hold and uphold, and we apply to generalist practice. One is emphasis on client empowerment, strength, and resilience. Empowerment is the process of increasing personal, interpersonal, or political power so that individuals can take actions to improve their life situations. Self-determination is simply the client's right to make his or her own decision. The client's strengths include their capacities, resources, and assets. Client resilience is the ability of an individual, family, group, or community or organization to recover from adversity and resume functioning. These terms come directly out of your textbook. The second principle involving values that is emphasized is the importance of understanding diversity and differences. These differences shape the human experience and are critical to the formation of identity. When we're thinking about human diversity, we would like to encourage all of our social workers to think very broadly when you think about diversity. Diversity can include gender, age, identity, marital status, socioeconomic status, immigration status, spirituality, sex, sexual orientation, among other things, as well as culture and ethnicity. Another key principle in generalist practice includes advocacy for human rights and the advancement of social, economic, and environmental justice. This is important. And these are all core principles that we apply in generalist practice. When social workers are engaging in generalist practice, they're oftentimes embedded in agencies, social service agencies specifically, in order to do their work. In that aspect, organizational structure is important, and understanding organizational structure is key in how that particular social worker carries out their generalist practice. The book defines organizational structure as the formal and informal manner in which task and responsibility, lines of authority, channels of communications, and dimensions of power are established and coordinated within an organization. Social workers use our values and principles within these organizational structures. We consider how we empower clients as well as how human diversity plays a role, not only within the agency, but how the agency carries out their task and how that impacts diversity factors related with the client. We're oftentimes within these social service agencies or these organizations advocating for social and economic justice for our client. So we are oftentimes applying and integrating these values into our work. But there's also a process in which we utilize when we think about applying our values and standards. One is our professional role that is informed by these values and principles. But it's also critical thinking. How are we thinking more in depthly about our work with clients, as well as how we utilize research to inform practice and practice to inform research, and what is our specific plan for change. So now that we have a better understanding, we're going to move a little forward into this PowerPoint. The learning objectives for this chapter is to employ a unique approach to helping in the field of social work, define the process of generalist practice, which we've already done, acquire and apply an eclectic knowledge base to practice, apply the systems theory as a theoretical framework, as well as the ecological theoretical framework, consider professional values and apply those professional ethics to practice, as we discussed, recognize a wide range of practice skills to work with individuals, families, groups, organizations, and communities. Emphasize principles involving values that underlie generalist practice. Appreciate and stress the importance of human diversity and the need to advocate for human rights and pursue social, economic justice and environmental justice, and demonstrate a wide range of professional roles. And we'll go more into detail about what those many roles that a social worker can take in generalist practice. We also want to make sure in this chapter we define critical thinking skills and apply them to practice, as well as incorporate research-informed practice and practice-informed research, follow a planned change process, and employ the GIM, the Generalist Intervention Model, which uses a 7-step plan change focus. So when we're thinking about generalist social work practice, it focuses on many different types of problems, and it may target environments also for change. Advocacy is clear because this is how we stand up for our clients and make sure their rights are being upheld in communities, agencies, and the larger environment. It requires us to understand what our professional values and ethics are and apply that in our work with clients. And it encourages us to partner and collaborate with our clients in order to advocate for them and to improve outcomes for them. And generalist social work practice requires strict adherence to professional standards, i.e. our code of ethics. This diagram here talks about organizational structure. Again, as I mentioned before, most social workers are required to operate and practice within an organizational structure. And that structure allows us to apply our knowledge, values, and skills. Again, on the left side, talks about the principles and the values, how we use those principles and values in our process, critical thinking processes within our roles and our research and plan change, and how we target the micro, meso, and macro system. When we talk about our knowledge base and the many different skills and knowledge that we bring to social work, one key theoretical knowledge base that we draw from is systems theory. System theory or systems is a set of orderly interrelated elements that form a functional whole. We define a system more so as the whole, made up by smaller parts. The concept of system theory helps a social worker focus on targeted intervention by assessing the systems that a client interacts with. There are many concepts that are used in systems theory. One is subsystem, which is considered a secondary or subordinate system, or what we also call a system within a system. Another term heavily used in system theories are boundaries. This can be visible or invisible, meaning clear or not as clear, but we consider it a demarcation line that separates an individual from other subsystems or other larger systems. Another concept is interaction, which involves mutual involvement and communication with other people and groups within an environment. You will also hear concepts such as input and output when we talk about systems theory. Input is the energy, information, or communication flow received from other systems. Output is the same flow emitted from a system to the environment or to other systems. Two more important concepts, homeostasis and equifinality. Homeostasis refers to the tendencies for a system to maintain a relatively stable, constant state of equilibrium or balance. When we talk about equifinality, we're talking about getting the same end by different means. So it refers to the fact that there are many different means to the same end. When we think about systems theory, it's one of the most helpful tools that social workers can use and one of the earlier theories we expose social workers to in the field. Again, it's understanding what is the client's systems. These systems can be how the client operates within their family system, how the client interacts within their neighborhoods and communities, how the clients interact within their larger organizational structures. The social worker is key here because the social worker serves as a change agent, helping the client to adapt better and have better outcomes within these different systems. When we're talking about an ecological perspective, it's an extension and a more comprehensive, naturally expansion of systems theory. Even though systems theory is very helpful in helping social workers assess and intervene, many social workers pull back from that concept because it's very scientific and it's not humanistic in its use of terms. And for some social workers, they feel the language to be a little awkward when we're talking about individuals. For some, the ecological perspective is a little bit more person-friendly. What are we talking about when we're talking about the ecological perspective? We're talking about social environments, person and environment, transaction, energy, input, output as well, interface. But we're also incorporating more humanistic terms such as adaptation, coping, as well as interdependence. Instead of using the term system, ecological perspective discusses social environments and the conditions, circumstances, and human interactions that encompass human beings. When we're talking about the person and environment focus, it sees people as constantly interacting with various systems around them. Again, transactions in which something is communicated or exchanged between individuals in the systems. Energy, input, output, same. Interface, the exact point at which the interaction between an individual and the environment takes place. Coping is a form of human adaptation. Interdependence is the mutual reliance of each person on each other in a system. Adaptation is the capacity to adjust to surrounding environmental conditions. These are all concepts utilized in the ecological conceptual framework. So again, it's really our person and environment framework, and it's person-centered, and really looking at those interactions within a social environment for the same reason, to see how a client's well-being is, or areas of need, so that that client can fit better within those social systems. This chart here talks about some of the things we've already discussed, the values and principles of social work. It also includes the system theories and discussion of ecological perspective. It also talks about the human behavior, something we haven't talked about yet. One of the courses that you'll take here, if you're not taking already, is HPSI, Human Behavior and Social Environment. It really highlights what we're referring to when we're talking about the ecological perspective. It really talks about how humans are developed and how they develop physically, intrapsychically within their environment. It really takes a generalist perspective in that it considers assessment of problems, intervention, and planning of problems using, as I've discussed, standards and values of the social work profession. The human behavior and social environment perspective relies heavily on accurate assessment of a person, problem, or a situation, right? And understanding how the environment plays a role in developing important interventions to help the client. We're also, in the human behavior and social environment perspective, looking also at the interactions. So our human behavior and social environment really applies strongly the ecological perspective. This chart also talks about social welfare policy as well as social work practice. And what do we mean when we're talking about social welfare policy? The textbook talks about social welfare policy as including laws and regulations that determine how resources are distributed and what opportunities are made available so that people may lead fruitful and fulfilling life. Policies are the rules that tell us which actions among a multitude of actions we may and may not take. And we often utilize these policies, or we are limited or supported by these policies to help our client. Most social service agencies have agency policies, and those are the standards opted that govern how the organization is structured. These agency policies are crucial for social workers, right? They really help supervisors manage and support our workers, as well as the policies are also in place to protect our clients as well. When we talk about policy practice, that involves the efforts to change policies in legislative agencies and community settings, whether by establishing new policies, improving existing ones, or defeating the policy initiatives of other people. Again, these terms come directly out of the textbook. When we talk about social work practices, we're talking about the actual work or the doing of social work, how we form relationships with client, how we help them share information, how we define and or assess their issues and problems, how we identify and foster their strengths, collect and assess information, identify and evaluate numerous alternative actions, how do we implement plans, evaluate progress, terminate client work, terminate client relationships in our work. That is what we're talking about when we refer to social work practice. And social workers use a wide range of professional roles in order to do that. Again, this particular chart talks about counseling. The social worker acts as a counselor, an educator, a broker, case manager, mobilizer, mediator, facilitator, manager, initiator, negotiator, spokesperson, organizer, consultant, and again, an advocate. When we talk about social workers as brokers, we're talking about them linking client systems to needed resources. When we're talking about social workers as case managers, we're talking about coordinating needed services to clients. And these services oftentimes come from many community agencies. We also think of a social worker, one of the social work roles, as a mobilizer, one who identifies and convenes community people and resources to identify unmet community needs. Facilitator, social workers are also often guiding a group experience for clients. Managers, supervisors, who assume some level of administrative responsibility for social services. Negotiator, one who represents an organization or group trying to wrestle something from another group. Organizer, one who coordinates individuals or groups to pursue some designated function. And again, advocate. And in order to do that, the social worker must apply critical thinking skills. This is what we consider careful scrutiny of what is stated as true or what appears to be true. You are hopefully challenged in this course and other courses to start applying critical thinking skills. It is in these roles that we play as social workers that we start developing the plan change that's needed for our clients. But when we're also talking about social work practice, we're talking about it being delivered from an empirical base, and that's where we talk about research-informed practice. We're making sure that we're using evidence that we know works, evidence either from the literature, evidence from practice, evidence from quantitative and qualitative studies to influence our work with clients and develop what we know is the plan change needed to get that client where they need to be. I won't talk too much about it now, but I will go over it in another video. The National Association of Social Worker Code of Ethics is the gold standard when we talk about principles and values of social work, and those important principles that we apply in our work with clients as well as in research. Another base that we use is the International Federation of Social Workers, International Association of Schools of Social Work Ethics and Social Work Statements of Principles. These help us provide to us our guiding principles that we apply to our work with clients every single day. Again, when we're thinking about those principles and values, we're applying it at the micro, meso, and the macro level. We are also making sure that we are highlighting strengths and resilience in our clients. And again, those diversity factors that impact our clients. But most importantly, we want to make sure that we are practicing in a culturally competent way and making sure that we limit or remove the potential for discrimination and oppression with our clients, but also recognize the uniqueness of those diversity factors that I spoke of earlier. So when you're thinking about critical thinking skills, think about the AAA approach, ask questions, constantly assess, and then assert the necessary action plan needed for our clients. We also utilize what we call the GIM, the Generalist Intervention Model, which is the plan steps for change or the plan change steps. There are 7 of them. Step 1 is engagement. How do we engage our clients? How do we engage with the systems in which our clients are interacting with? Assessments. How do we identify the needs and the problems and the issues of our clients? Planning. How are we using the research practice? How are we using what we know from the literature to plan? How are we utilizing theories such as systems theory and ecological theory in our planning, as well as our assessment for our clients? Then implementation. Once you have assessed, planned, now it's time to execute the plan of action as the change agent for our clients. And then how do we evaluate our work to see if outcomes have been met? And then the formal process of termination of our work and follow up with our clients to make sure they are doing okay, or at least the changes that we made, whether it's a policy change or a direct practice change, micro practice level change with individual, whether it is still meeting the needs for clients. This diagram breaks that down. Again, foundation of generalist practice and knowledge, skills, and values, how we utilize that in the GIM model. And then how do we reassess and discontinue contact with client to make sure they're doing well in the follow-up process. That GIM level can be applied at all levels, micro level with individuals, the micro/meso level with families, meso level with groups, and macro level with organizations and communities. Quick summary of what I talked about. Knowledge, skills, and values, key in the foundation of our generalist practice. Knowledge includes field of practice, whether that's mental health, substance use, homelessness. Our theoretical perspective, such as the systems theory, ecological perspective. What we know about social welfare policy and practice is what we apply in our generalist practice. How we gather research to inform practice and then use our practice to inform research. And most importantly, our values and principles of the profession and distinguishing that from our personal values. Skills with individuals, families, groups, organizations, and community. And again, our professional values, professional ethics, client empowerment, human diversity, advocacy for human rights. The chapter completes with talking about guides to help you with the assessment and planning phase. This introduction is very important to the generalist practice model. I encourage you to consider it, review the key concepts that was discussed in this video, but also take another step further and apply the concept to your work in the field when you begin your internships and your practice. Really think about the systems theory and applying it to your work at agencies and with clients, as well as the ecological perspective. Have an understanding when you go to your internship, how social work practice, how it looks, what are some of the policies embedded that help encourage social welfare policies. See if there's any specific research or empirical evidence used to inform the work in the agency, and what do you see as some of the key values and principles in that agency. When you're doing your internship work, see if that agency or your work primarily deals with individuals, whether it's families, groups, organization, or you're more in a macro level and you're focusing more on organizations and communities. Also see how well, assess and measure how that particular agency highlights and values professional ethics and how it's integrated in the work. See how key principles such as human diversity, advocacy, and client empowerment, how it plays out in your agency. So that will end this video of chapter 1. Please make sure you read the chapter in its entirety as you will be tested on the material. As always, if you have any questions for me, please use the instructor blog to send me a message. That way all students can benefit from the answers. If necessary, please feel free to email me as well. Hopefully this is a good start to your introduction to generalist social work practice. Thank you.